Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this week's Coffee Chat. I'm Erin Burns, Certified Estate Planner.
And I'm Ashley Terrell, Financial Advisor.
Yep. So today we're going to be talking about women in finances, in particular, the three-basket approach to financial security, in particular directed at women. So we at Burns Estate Planning and Wealth Advisors, we treat men and women the same. We think that they should be invested the same and treated the same, especially in particular to estate planning. We don't believe that women need pink stocks and men need blue stocks because that would just be silly. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, we keep seeing this, that women feel like they are being treated unfairly whenever it comes to financial planning. So we know that you as women, you face more unique opportunities and challenges that are different from men, and this often requires more financial planning than it does for men.
Mm-hmm. And luckily, they have us here to consult.
Yes.
We can relate to them.
Absolutely.
So first of all, let's start off with the facts about women and money. It's a fact we are the primary breadwinner in approximately 40% of families. And women make up 48% of millionaires in the U.S.
Go girls.
We're also graduating, at a faster rate from graduate and undergraduate school than men, as well as it's expected by 2030 that U.S. women will control nearly $3 trillion in wealth, which is, that's huge.
It is. Mm-hmm. So even with all this good news for women, financial planning is even still more important for women than men. And can anyone tell me why? Can you tell me why? Because
we live longer.
We tend to live longer. We're not going to try to kill off men sooner, but statistics show that usually the husbands pass away first, and that leaves women in a unique position to need more in-depth financial planning. Mm-hmm. So I was very surprised to learn that the average age of widowhood is 59. 59 years old. If you think about that, that's pretty young and pretty scary statistic. 80% of men die married, while 80% of women die single. Therefore, you need to have more money to fund a longer retirement. So what happens if you're left with a plan that doesn't really work? You're trying to scramble and pick up all these pieces and put this puzzle together. After your husband is gone, that's where we can step in and help.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen several of those cases.
Unfortunately, yes.
Sadly, what's not a surprise is that nearly half of all marriages end in divorce. And most of those divorces are caused by money. It goes without saying that women are typically left with more of a financial challenge during divorce than men are. And this could have something to do with the fact that they aren't aware of where all of their assets are allocated and where these accounts are. So they're not even in the know to get their share of what they deserve.
Yes, and since women tend to be the caretakers of the home, of the children, women spend an average of 11 and a half years longer out of the workforce than men do raising children. This obviously means lost wages, but it also means less going into your Social Security and pension plans. So we need to try to pick up that slack.
Mm-hmm. We've seen some of that as well. A really big burden that we've noticed is the financial burden of parents on the daughter for whatever reason, which I can completely relate to this, and as well you can too.
I can too.
The women always find themselves taking care of the parents, so this is something that they definitely need to plan for.
Yes, and lastly, I hate to even point this out, but if you're married and your husband falls ill, you tend to spend more of the retirement savings on his health care instead of supporting the household, because medical bills they come first. There's no way around it. So that typically doesn't leave the wife with sometimes enough money to live on later.
Mm-hmm. And that is one of the things I noticed Ernie likes to look at a lot, any products that have any long-term health care benefits. So that's something to explore.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the retirement basket. When it comes to retirement, what do you really need? You need income. The financial service industry, I think, does most of us a disservice. They talk about whenever we reach retirement and the different kinds of products, mutual funds, annuities, insurance, and stocks versus bonds. What really matters when you retire is where are you going to get that income from? How will it be consistent and stable? Because number one, your money needs to, at the very least, keep up with inflation. You want to pay as little as taxes as possible. And you're going to want to wait. You're going to want your income to last a long time because you are potentially, hopefully, going to be retired for decades and enjoy that retirement. As women, it is more critical for you than the man in your life, if you have one, because you're going to live longer again. This should be a set in stone type of plan. This shouldn't be a hope and pray and, hope everything works out. This should be something that's outlined in black and white. You should have a plan for the very worst.
Absolutely. Okay, so that was the first basket. Now we're going to talk about the second basket. This is called the security basket. I also like to call this the what if basket. So it holds all the things that you need to consider to help protect yourself and your family. So the first step is determining your financial standing is to know where all the money is. Because if you don't know where it all is, then how do you know which sources to pull from for certain points in your retirement? So what you need to do first is you need to make a list. Start with a list, and then next you're going to make it longer. So you need to think, if you're married, if your husband were to pass away today, where everything is. So you need to make a list of all of your assets as well as expenses to know what's coming in, also what's going out, and then we can help you try to fill in any lacking in that area. Okay, so again, in this basket is if you're here and you're single or you're widowed, whatever the case may be, then your children are going to need to know where everything is, so they're not left scrambling trying to figure out where was this and where was that. So again, you need to know where everything is, and you also need to make sure that your children, when that time comes, know where everything is. Okay, so the second is estate planning. First, do you have a will or a living trust? A few things to think about. Is it up to date? Does your family know where it's located? Because if you do estate planning, whether it's a will or a trust, if no one knows where it is, then it's kind of obsolete. So you need to at least, you don't have to tell your kids or family what's in it, what your wishes are, but you need to at least let them know that you've done planning and where to find those documents. And then across the board, any life insurance, IRAs, things like that, accounts like that, you need to just double check it. Are the beneficiaries up to date? And you need to make sure any other accounts set up correctly to pass on. So whether it's a bank account, a non-qualified account, there's ways that you can transition them to your heirs to make sure that they avoid succession. So let's go back to a trust for a second. Will versus a trust. Wills obviously go through succession, but if you want to avoid succession, which is unnecessary time delays, unnecessary fees, then you can transfer your assets to a trust. First, it allows you to name not only who gets your assets, but how. So if you have any situations in your family where you might want to set up a distribution, maybe payments over time as opposed to a lump sum, you can do that in a trust. But no matter what you have, again, you need to make sure that it is up to date and that your family knows where it is. And last but not least, life insurance. Beneficiaries. I've been really surprised if I'm reviewing a client's documents where they might have had only their spouse named and their spouse is deceased, or maybe just their spouse named and he's still living. But you need to always make sure to have contingent beneficiaries listed on those insurance policies and also any of your IRAs.
Absolutely. And another thing I wanted to touch on is a lot of times the trust costs less than the probate would cost. So it's like a no-brainer.
Yeah, so people often have a misconception about trust. They think, trusts are for the rich only and for these huge estates. But that is simply not true. Yes, as Ashley mentioned, usually doing a trust, getting ahead of the game, is usually costs less than succession or probate. So it's definitely worth the conversation. If you have questions about that, call. We can go through everything to see which would be a best fit for you and your family.
Absolutely. That brings us to the last basket, the dream basket. So go ahead, write down 2 things that you would want to do in retirement. If you're already retired, write down 2 things that you still want to do. We all have dreams, and a lot of us think, well, if only we had the time and money, right? Well, what we find is by the time you reach this stage in life and you sit down with us, we notice that most of you do have the money. You just have to put it to work in order to make your dreams come true. The key is definitely how to use your money correctly so that you can enjoy retirement and what you worked so hard for. And that's what the Dream Basket's all about.
Yes, absolutely. So in a combination of those 3 baskets, we can help make sure that you and your family are on your way to financial security. But thanks for joining us for this week's coffee chat and the 3 basket approach to women and financial security. And we'll see you next week.